episode 137, Radical Self-Care for Caregivers. Welcome to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast, helping micropreneurs find your micro-influencer magic. I'm your host, Candice Rodardi, and this week I'm joined by caregiver warrior, Susanne White. Susanne was blessed with the opportunity to care for her parents and ventured out on a caregiving journey that would change her life. She blogs about this journey on her website, caregiverwarrior.com, and shares her experience, strength, and hope with others so that they too may survive caregiving with grace and empowerment. She outlines ways caregivers can replenish mind, body, and spirit in her latest book, Self-Care for Caregivers. Welcome, my friend.
Hello, Miss Candice. How are you?
I am so excited because you and I have known each other for 10 years. And so you really are my friend. And this is the first time we've actually seen each other's faces on video. We've always talked on the phone. We've been phone friends for 10 years. And this is the first time we've
Absolutely.
seen each other to have a face-to-face conversation. So this is exciting for me.
It's very exciting. Modern technology,
Yeah.
it's amazing, really, that we can share like this, and it's just amazing. I just love it.
So share I'm out of order. I'm out of order. I've already started out of order. I've already strayed from the script. So share your unique story. How'd you get to where you are?
My caregiver warrior story is that I ended up taking care of my parents. Something that a lot of us do, we're not normally prepared for or think we're going to do, but stuff happens. So, if you had told me that I would be caring for my parents, especially my mom, like when I was younger, I would have told you you were absolutely crazy. A, they didn't need my help. B, my mom didn't want my help. And C, my mom and I didn't get along. But my dad and my mom worked together to sort of hide the fact that my mom was in beginning stages of Alzheimer's and that my dad was starting to have heart issues. So they worked as a team to kind of hide it from us really well. They did a really good job. However, when we were all flying down to Florida one holiday season, my sister always had the holidays there. Um, they had to take my dad off the aircraft in a wheelchair because he was so sick during the flight. And I always say that that's the second time they took him off an aircraft because he was a World War II bombardier pilot and he got shot and flak came up through the floor of the cabin and he managed to land the plane, save his legs. Actually, somehow they saved his legs. So the second time they took him off, that was the first time they took him off a plane. He couldn't walk. And then the second time was he couldn't walk was because he was caring for my mom. So he was a caregiver warrior. He was facing caregiver burnout and I stepped in.
Let's talk about your parents hiding the fact that they needed to be that they needed caregiving.
They
Why do you
needed
think they
help.
did that?
Well, I think there's, lots of different reasons they do it. And I'll tell you something. I was really angry at them in like years, like in the beginning. And now I'm in hindsight, they were entitled to that. They were entitled to do it their way. And they did really well up until a certain point. But I think, fear of getting older, I think fear of, my mom is a control freak like me. She wanted to control everything and didn't want anybody to step in and help her. She didn't want to be vulnerable. I think they do it, and the fear of somebody just taking their lives away from them or the normalcy, like their normal life is going to change if other people step in. And it's true. I mean, I stepped in like a helicopter caregiver. I'm sure I was tough as a caregiver because I didn't know what I was doing.
So how did you
Yes.
prevent yourself from getting burned out? Because you didn't know what you were doing, and all of a sudden you're taking care of both of them. So what did you do to prevent yourself from getting burned out? How'd you take care of
Well,
yourself?
Well, yeah, and I think like a lot of people say, you have to prevent burnout. You have to, no, everybody gets burnout. I mean, caregiver burn. We all, I mean, unless you're really, really lucky, all of us get burnout. I mean, it just happens. There's nothing you can do about it other than make it less. Make. In other words, I always say like if you're going to hit the wall with caregiver burnout. So do you want to hit it at 20 miles per hour or 150 miles an hour? So, I did everything I possibly could. I've got a big toolbox of stuff that I use to make sure that when I splat up against the wall, it's I'm not like splattered all over, you know what I mean? Everything for, and about this. Gratitude's a really big one. Making sure physically you're, the best you can possibly be with, whatever circumstances you're in. Making sure that, you're really, really kind to yourself and compassionate and forgiving. We can talk, length about all this stuff, but, you just got to give yourself a break. You can't be perfect. You have great intentions. You're trying to care for people you love or people you want to serve, and you're doing a great job. Give yourself a break and take care of yourself, period. Whatever that means.
My mom passed away about 11 years ago, and I was not her caregiver. I didn't even live in the same state, so I wasn't there for any of it. Um, but I often wonder about my dad because he was the primary caregiver and my sister in part too. And it just seemed like he got haggard.
Here's the thing, especially if you're caring for somebody who's difficult. I mean, my dad was the easiest going guy in the universe, and my mom was the complete opposite. I mean, she was so tough. You couldn't tell her anything. Unfortunately, caregiving healed my relationship with her, but that's kind of another story. But, you know, she was not allowed to drive. I mean, because she just couldn't remember. It's not only short-term memory, it's, the physicality of doing things, the brain concepts. So anyway, he let her drive the car one day. They went out, they went shopping. They were in the car together. And I will never know what happened, but I just know how he told me the story about it. He goes, "Oh, geez, I'll never do that again." And my dad was like, that's like, for him to say that, it was amazing. So they're just lucky. They didn't kill somebody, right? I mean, forget us and our family. I mean, they're lucky she didn't run somebody over, have a major accident. So, again, it's because she was insistent and strong and, had clarity at moments and just really bulldozed her way through a lot of stuff. It's a tightrope, you're walking a tightrope as a caregiver, and you do the best you can. And yeah, you're exhausted. And yeah, you screw up. I mean, yeah, you don't make the best decisions all the time.
And maybe he wanted her to have a moment of clarity, and he wanted to have the old wife back, not the new wife. Yeah. So my grandmother had dementia for 10 years, and she could take care of herself very well. She just didn't know who any of us were, but she could take care of herself. She lived alone for the first 5 of it, and
Wow.
had someone come in and check on her every day, but she could take care of herself. And then at the point where it looked like, okay, she can't take care of herself anymore, because with dementia is different than Alzheimer's. Dementia is memory, and Alzheimer's is they don't remember how to brush their teeth. In dementia, they forget who people are. So eventually I went from being her favorite granddaughter to her not even knowing that I existed on any level and way, shape, or form.
Someone told me something once that really was kind of helpful to me, that, the what they think happens is that the memory unravels like in a time fashion. So, you unfold the 80s and then the 70s and this, like, so that, you can end up being like 6 or 7 years old, memory wise. So, because they're the deepest ingrained, hooks into your memory. So it kind of helped me a little bit with my mom. Yeah, my mom. Yes, it's she never forgot who I was, probably because we were so at each other for so many years. But like I said, caregiving really helped help my relationship with her.
Yeah. And that's a really good way of describing it. It's like unraveling the decades.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened to my grandmother. I think she went back to her 30s, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where her kids
And
were
you were,
still.
and you, yeah, and you weren't around yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Her kids were probably teenagers when she was in her 30s. So yeah,
yeah.
I think that's where she went because she still knew important things. Like she could still play the piano and things like that. But
That's an
yeah.
amazing point, by the way,
Yeah.
is music. We see that over and over and over again. Like my mom loved jazz. Mom loved the blues and jazz and whatever. And, I would put on she used to love Dr. John. And I would put on Dr. John and we would dance in the kitchen. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? Like it was, and I think that's a really important point, is that, my mom was still my mom, even though she was sort of a stranger. Was able to find moments where we really connected in a really nice way. And allowing that was really nice. Accepting what I had at the time was
Yeah.
great, and
I
finding
want
out what worked.
I want to talk about knowing when it's time to churn the caregiving over to someone else. I have a friend, and she's just churned her husband over to memory care. And they were living together, and he got to the point where he knew that she belonged to him, but he was waking up every
Mm,
morning with a woman in his bed.
mm,
He didn't even remember her name, just that she belonged to him
mm.
in some way. So it was time. I mean, but how do you know? When do you draw that line?
I mean, that's such an important question, but I don't know that I have the answer. Anybody has the answer. I think we all have the answer within us. I think it's in our hearts. And I think, but as in life, you got to really listen to that quiet voice inside that says, it's time to really help them and, make sure that they're safe.
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody. My parents died within 7 weeks of each other. My dad, yeah, it was like intense. My dad died, and my mom collapsed at his funeral luncheon. And being the little stubborn, what that she was, she refused to go to the nurses, but to the hospital. So I had a nurse come the next day and evaluate her and say, no, she's got to go in, because it was just, there was stuff going on. So, and anyway, you know, she was in the hospital. She never came home. We had to go to rehab after. My sister found this amazing rehab for her. And, she had to go after, and she never left there. So, you know, I felt really, um, I felt really guilty about that. But I knew that I couldn't do 24-hour care for her where she was at home. Like, in other words, even if I had nurses come in, she was not going to get the same care that she was going to get at this, facility that we had her in. And they did everything they could to bend over backwards, including bringing hospice. So, um, but it's that, how do you make that decision? You make the decision the best way you can, when you can. And in your heart, you know. And I think there is a peace that comes with that if you're really honest about it. I think, because it's there's just so much you can do. And if you're not a professional and there's extraordinary care that needs to happen, it's dangerous for them. So sometimes you have to make a decision, even though it breaks your heart.
So how do you forgive yourself? That's an
Mm,
important question.
it's a really important question. A day at a time.
That's a good question. That's a good answer. That's a very good answer. All right, let's talk about your book. Why did you write the book?
I stole an hour. I always wanted to ride horses, so I stole an hour every Sunday to ride horses with a bunch of gals. I call them my cowgirl caregivers, and it turns out we were all caring for someone. And I mean, the universe just put us together. But we would like cry and laugh, and my friend Karen, I'm still really close to today, and we would like talk, and we would say, "Oh my God, nobody tells you this!" Like, holy crap, and would be a lot of cursing in there. They don't tell you this. And I thought to myself, oh, well, and I started journaling, and then I started blogging. And then I realized that if I really told the truth about my journey, like my mom was screaming at me and bit me, I mean, like, what I mean? Like, that maybe this would help other people. And it kind of seemed to. So next thing I knew, I was asked to write this book, and I wrote the book, and here it is. I got a hard copy of it.
Yay.
And yay. So, it's hopefully things I've learned, mistakes I made, tips, tricks, in a really bite size, easy to read. There's like 140 tools in here to help you, and, pick one.
142. I love that you call them tools, because I love that phrase, tools. So the book came out in September of 2022, and if you're listening to this episode the day that it airs, it was just a couple weeks ago. So, however, the day that we record, I love this. The day that we record, the book hasn't come out yet. So it's kind of an exciting time. So I can't ask you about the actual how it feels to know the book is launched, but I can ask you how it feels to know that you've done all this work and it's about to happen.
You know, And I know you're so creative too. So, the fact that it was in my head and then now it's like here, it's like incredible, and I have a really good friend of mine is a novelist, Yvonne, and I'm like, oh my God, it came out of my head. And she helped me because I had I was great writing like the first half of it. And then I kind of got stuck in like what she calls the messy middle. And it was a creative process to do it, but it's shocking that it's done, that I did it and that it's done. And people actually seem to think it's okay and that it's going to get out there. It's literally was from my head into. So, I mean, that process is, really miraculous, that just the creative process,
And the
is
fact that you finished it and that you
yeah.
birthed it.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people incubate books and then never give birth to them. Like, is that the right word? You incubate and
Yeah.
give birth?
Yeah,
I don't
you
know. I don't think.
incubate. Yeah, well, you
I-
incubate, you marinate,
yeah,
you sort
yeah.
of
And then,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
they never cook it, right? You marinate the meat and then you never cook it.
No,
But
you never, yeah, so
you've actually done the whole process. So what do you
yeah.
think is what do you think is the reason why you actually got it done where other people might not?
You know what? That was a great question. I'll tell you why. And the same person I was talking about, Yvonne, because it's Adams Media, which is a division of Simon Schuster, and they found me on Instagram. They found my writing on Instagram, and someone approached me about doing it. And I was kind of, ugh, but Yvonne said to me, who you're writing this for? You're writing this book for because it's going to be it's going to be Barnes and Nobles, whatever, but it's also in self-help sections, say at airports. So she says you're going to be writing for that caregiver that's jumping on a plane to go care for somebody who's completely freaked out, you know. And I thought, I know her. I know her. So I can write to her. So I think seeing that caregiver who maybe thought like was so frightened the way I was and so lost the way I was, maybe that I could say to her, it's going to be okay. You're going to look back on it and go, oh my God, how'd I do this? But it's going to be okay. And you're going to do it. You can do this. Um, I think that's really what got me going on it. And I think and that's my mission too, is to let caregivers know, because my whole thing is about what's your state of mind. A lot of people can tell you, oh, go to this agency, do this. This is how you take care of Medicare. That's not my thing is, what are you thinking? Like, where are you in your head? So I want to pass that on to other people. I think that's the motivation behind it all for me.
I didn't know this part of it. You were actually recruited to write this book.
I was.
So let's talk about your Instagram profile and how attractive it was so that a publisher would actually ask you to write a book. What was it about your profile, do you think, that attracted the publisher?
I don't think it was my profile. I think it was my writing, because that's a really good form for me, that short caption thing. I have a Twitter account where I do like a weapon of the day every day. You guys can caregive warrior, not caregiver, caregive warrior. And so that's like a really like brief little thing. But Instagram, you don't have to write a whole blog. You don't have to write a book, but you have a moment where you can kind of, get in it a little bit. And I think it was a good form for me. And I think they like my writing. And I think they like the positioning of my writing. Basically was things like, do you feel really guilty today because get over yourself, stop that. It's that sort of down to earth sort of, this is how I feel. This is how I felt. This is the truth about it. I think that authenticity about how I face caregiving and how I think what caregivers go through and how they feel about it. I think hopefully that's what inspired them.
Well, also you were probably writing about a topic that they needed books about. I mean, publishers don't publish just anything. They publish what they think they can sell. Mm-hmm. And so caregiving is there's a whole, we're 150 years ago, mom and dad, son and daughter, son and their daughter-in-law, and all the son's kids all lived in the house together. It was a multi-generational family. And then we got away from that. But we're doing it again as a nation, mm-hmm. where we have multi-generational families again as a nation, and not a lot of them. But I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the number is, but I'm one of those people who researches. So by the time I publish this episode, I will have put that number in the show notes. So if you want to know what percentage of Americans have multi-generational families, that answer will be in the show notes. It's Gratitude Geek episode 137, as well links to all of Suzanne's social media channels. So, okay. But yeah, so you're writing. Go ahead.
Speaking to that, there's 58 million caregivers in the States alone.
So 58 million caregivers, and there's about 400 million Americans. Is that the right? I don't know those numbers. I don't even know how many Americans there are. How many people live in America? I think it's about 400 million. I don't know. I could be way off on that number. You know what? Let's Google it right now. 300. I was way off. 329 million. So, and there's 58 million.
That wasn't way off. I think that was a really good shot.
I was off by 70 million. So 58 million of those 329 million people who actually live in the United States, 58 million. That is 15% of the population are caregivers.
And I'm sure that number shifted. You know, that's a number that my friends in the caregiving community have been throwing around for a while. So I'm sure it's more than that.
It's crazy. It's totally crazy. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to your writing and Instagram, because there's people who are listening to this right now going, oh, maybe a publisher will come after me and want me to write a book. So you just wrote great posts with with maybe a little humor and but your topic was something that was needed in the market.
Yes.
So if you're a fashion blogger and you're blogging about fashion, you're probably not going to get pitched.
Yeah, but you never know. You know, my whole take on this whole thing is I want to get out there, and I want to, my next thing is, a speaking career, because I want to get out there in person, because I love to work a room. I love to be around the people. I think the whole thing about social media, and it's for free, guys, it doesn't cost you anything, is just to keep doing it and keep getting your profile out there. And there are times when I just don't have the time, or I don't feel like it, or, I got a lot going on, but I keep at it, even though I don't get a response. I mean, that's the thing. If you're really doing something from your heart and you really love it and you really believe in it, just don't get discouraged. I mean, I will hear like nothing for, because caregivers are kind of quiet. They don't have a lot of time to say, hi, how are you? It's like, sorry, I got to clean something up over here. And I won't hear anything. And then I'll get I got a tweet once that it was like, hi, you don't know me, but I just lost my mom. She just passed. And I just want you to know I could have never gotten through it without you and your writing.
I hope that you took a screenshot of that so you can use it as a testimonial. See, that's the thing. As a marketer, that's the first thing that came to mind.
I hope I did that, Candace. I think I might have. I think I did, only because when that happens to me, and I don't even, good for you, because thank you for telling me that, because I just thought like, oh my God, I have to save that, because I have to remember that when I feel like I'm doing all this work and it doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? Like no one's hearing me, no one cares, but then you have something like that and it carries you through. You just got to keep showing up for it and keep doing it. And learning, Well,
she is now your ideal client avatar, right?
Yeah.
She is and I mean, if you know her first name, just when you're writing and you feel like you're going down, this is me being a marketing coach. When you feel like you're going, you're putting your message out there for nothing, you're not. You are writing that post for her. Like I have a podcast listener that I know absorbs every single one of my podcasts. I know her name. I know where she lives. I know who she is. And whenever I do an interview, I think, would she like this episode?
Oh, that's great.
What would she want to know? And because I just focus on making sure that I'm providing content for her, I'm providing good content, because she's not the only one who's going to have these questions. Right?
Oh, that's brilliant.
And I do the same thing when I look at potential guests for the show. I'm like, probably not a good fit, because that's not a message that my ideal client would want to hear. Right?
Wow. Wow.
So
it's really good to have that person. Yeah.
Yeah. So just turn her into your avatar. Just, she's your person. Everything you do is for her, even though she's no longer caregiving. Somebody who fits her description who you're going to touch next.
It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's brilliant. Thank you. It's interesting you say that because, I used to be in the music business. So I remember I had a friend who was a radio host. She was a radio DJ, and she had a picture of somebody taped to her mic. You know what I mean? That's who she would talk to.
That's brilliant. Taping the photo to the mic is brilliant. I love that. I love that. Oh, it's awesome. I also wanted to go back to the topic of caregiving because the number one most downloaded episode of this podcast is an interview with another caregiving coach. So it really is a topic that people want to know about.
Mm.
Yeah. Even though this is a marketing podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I think the people who listen are at that age where they're at that age where they're going to start caregiving.
Guaranteed. I will bet that I'm just going to throw a number out here, but I will bet that half. I worked a full-time job. I believe that half of your marketers are caring for people or caregivers, or don't think they're caregivers, but they're caring for people. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the other thing. They like, oh my, I'm a caregiver. Yeah. If you're helping your neighbor out with groceries, yeah.
Well, it isn't necessarily about parents or like you said, your neighbors, but I'm living with metastatic breast cancer, and there was 2 years of my life where my husband was my caregiver, and it affected how we own our own business, and it affected how much he could work, and it affected how much our employees could work because we had employees, and it really affected everything, and he had to rearrange his entire schedule around me and caring for me because there was a period of time where I was taking an infusion that I lost my ability to walk. Right. So, it's so but I'm fine now. Right. Right. So caregiving could be a short piece of time, then it could be an extended period. Like I'm my grandmother for over 10 years, could be, any of those things. And the outcome of caregiving could be positive, and the outcome of caregiving could be, I'd like to say positive as well, because I like to believe that, there's something wonderful and better after this life.
No, I agree. I agree because I think there's a lot of peace there. But they're just like, and your husband ran the business. In other words, there's a lot of people that work and have to keep their businesses and have to market their business,
and I can't even imagine what it would have been like if he didn't have the flexibility to schedule his days around me, right? If he had to go to a job, I can't imagine what that's like for a family like that in that situation. And there's rough. 25% of American women get breast cancer, right? So that means that 1 in 4 husbands possibly may have to take care of their wife for a period of time. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Not saying that every woman who gets breast cancer is married. I'm just making a broad paintbrush stroke, broad stroke.
And the bottom line of it is hopefully, they all have a support system who's going to be called into action, and a lot of us can't, like, I couldn't put my job on hold. I needed that money. I went through money. That's a whole other conversation at some point, but like you got to do what you got to do when you got to do it, how you got to do it, who you are, it's.
And again, you had a very flexible job. So, you're lucky. You're lucky. The one thing that my husband did years later, he didn't complain about it then, but years later, he said, I really wish that there had been a support system for me, because I got all the support. My friends rallied around me, and, they showed up with food and all that stuff. And I was so lucky. My girlfriends got together and paid for me to have a housekeeper for a year.
Wow.
Is that not the best gift? He did get that support where, we didn't have to worry about housekeeping for a year. But he could have used some counseling or something, and they didn't. Yeah. It just wasn't an option. Yeah. We didn't. Yeah. And he was right. He should have been able to get a little support.
And this is two things. One, I'm going to mention that housekeeping thing, everywhere I go now. So there's going to be, so you just started something. So that's excellent. I'm going to be using it. But here's the other thing too. There's this, I don't want to call it stigma because that's the wrong word, but there's a stigma that caregivers carry around with them. I'm going to take on the job. I'm going to do a great job. I'm going to do it perfectly. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm fine. And you're not, no matter who you are, what you do, whatever. However, there's this thing that we have in society, and especially in America, where and other countries around the world, you you got to show up and do it by yourself. No, you don't, and it has nothing to do with what kind of caregiver you are. There's a loss of a sense of entitlement that caregivers have. They're entitled to get support. It's a really big, intense, nightmarish roller coaster journey. You're allowed to get help. I don't care how good you feel in the beginning. It doesn't matter. None of us can do it without support, but we think we can. And people agree with us. That's what's so crazy. Unless you're in a community of caregivers who go, hello, whoa, ho, 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 ho. Who knows? And I'm happy to say I think that because there's caregiver advocates out there now, that hospitals and doctors and are starting, and even nurses need help. Like the stigma is starting to get erased. It's like if you show up day one of caregiving, book, you should go into a suit of like love and protection and ways to figure out, how you feel and taking your emotional temperature and all that stuff.
When my mom was at the point where it was time to decide what to do next, we had a palliative care team come in and talk to the family. A team came in and talked to us as a family about the next steps. And, that's end of life. But caregiving could last for 20 years or longer. I mean, there are caregivers who care for people there. Children their entire until they're adults. The caregiving never ends. So I'm not saying, and I'm saying that a team like that should exist for all caregivers. I have a question about the pandemic. Do you, as a person that's in this space, do you think that these changes that you're talking about have come around since the pandemic? Because there was a lot of caregiving going on in the last couple of years that was unexpected because a lot of people, got this disease that nobody knew anything about. So, do you think that's something that's new, or did the trend start before the pandemic?
I think the trend did start before the pandemic, but I do think that it put it on steroids. And I think we all had to shift as a paradigm. I think there was a big shift in how we live, think, behave, act, die, care. And I think that I cannot, because I didn't really, I mean, I did a little bit, but I didn't really have to do Uber care for someone during the pandemic. I do not know how they did it. I don't know how, 80% of caregivers did it, because their loved ones, forget the fear they had about them, but their loved ones, they couldn't get to them. You know what I mean? So I think that anger and frustration and just total unpreparedness for that scenario has really set off some rockets of desire, so to speak, in the caregiving world, where, hey, we can't do this ever again. This has we have to rethink this. So I think you're right about that. I think it really helped. I think the numbers are going up for caregivers. I think I think there's people like me. I think there's a community. I see, I have a big community of caregiver advocates. We're called carepreneurs. I have a group of girls that we're all, because we're, we have the business around caregiving advocacy. And I think people are starting to get their message out there. I think that's what's kind of happening. And I think there's a demand. I think there's a demand in the caregiving world where, people are dropping like flies from caregiver burnout and like what to do about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're starting to ask for help, or the help that they needed, they're starting to get. I have a girlfriend 10 or 15 years ago. She was caring for her father-in-law, and the things that she had to do that she had to bathe him, and, he got to be incontinent, and, that all these things that she never expected that she would have. And she had to quit her job to take care of him. She never expected to have to do any of that with her father-in-law. Right.
Right.
She's giving her father-in-law baths. That's just not
Right.
something that she ever thought she had to do. And she didn't have a support system. I mean, she had her family and stuff, but she didn't have someone
Right.
like you to guide her through. And I'm sure, I mean, it was hard on her.
We have to change that. See, and you're helping me do that because you're having me on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm really, I mean, forget the business, the marketing, all that, because I'm passionate about that too. But I'm really passionate about that. I really don't want caregivers to be lost and alone. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, like you're helping to get like people like you are helping to get the word out. And it's people like me and, happy, healthy caregiver, sustainable caregiving, like all my buddies that we're really passionate about it, like we're screaming, it's like stop, you get help, it's okay. So you're helping because we have to get the word out, which is why I wrote the book, which is why I'm going to continue to blog. It's like you don't have to be miserable.
So
Like
I've heard three things from you about how you're getting the word out. You're collaborating with other carepreneurs,
carepreneurs.
caregiverpreneurs. Is that what it is? Carepreneurs? All
It's
right.
carepreneurs. Yeah, it's a master. We have a mastermind group.
I love masterminds. So you're collaborating, you've got your mastermind group, you're going out on podcasts and talk shows, and you're doing your spiel, you're doing the circuit, and then you're continuing to put your blog posts and your Instagram posts and and your weekly, is it weekly Instagram, Twitter? Yeah, you're doing like
I do it
Twitter
daily.
tips, daily Twitter
I do a
tips.
I do a weapon of the day every morning.
I love it. Oh, because caregiver warrior, so weapon of the day. I get it. I get it.
I'm putting out as much content as I can possibly do. And I got somebody to help me with my Instagram during this period, which is wonderful. I've got Nao, Social by Nao. She's like in England, and so I'm just putting out as much content as I possibly can to reach the widest audience. And it's basically me just saying, "Oh my God, this sucks. Here's what we can do about it."
I love that you've hired someone to help you with your social media while you're doing
Yeah,
all the other stuff.
yeah, I
That's
couldn't do it.
great. That's great.
Yeah. But I
Um,
do the content, and that's the other thing for marketing: content, 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 content. And and you'll get this. I had, like I have some stories about me and my mom that aren't pretty. Okay,
you have
but
to tell those stories.
I have those are stories that resonate. My biggest blog is how I forgave my old mom to take care of my new one. Like, don't be afraid to put stuff out there. If it's real and it's authentic, that's the content. And I still to this day question, like when I write something, I'm like, let it rip, girl, because that's the stuff. The authenticity about it is what draws people in. And then you can actually say, hey, here's a way out. You know what I mean? So content to me is really important. I try to do as much, and even though, I look 90 now, like, that my days of, you know what I mean? Like I'll do a reel. I found a really good filter on Instagram. I love my filter on Instagram. It's called Eyelash for anybody who wants it. It looks like I have makeup on. It's great. So then I can do like, a reel at like, 8:30 in the morning or 11 o'clock at night when I don't want to, you know what I mean? Just get it out there. Just do it.
I love that. Filters. Eyelash filter. There'll be a link to the eyelash filter in the show notes. There will be. I once had a photographer do a complimentary photo shoot of me. He did a bunch of photo shoots for cancer patients. And he was like, "Well, I have to airbrush it before I give it to you." And I'm like, "Don't. I don't want you to airbrush my photo. I had my makeup professionally done. Why do you need to airbrush it?" And I think it pissed him off because he never gave me the photo.
Oh, that's not nice.
I
That's not
know.
nice.
I know. But yeah, I don't know. There's some
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
two schools of thought there. And I'm like, I had
yeah,
my makeup and my hair done professionally. Why do I need
yeah,
to be airbrushed
yeah,
on top of that?
yeah.
But
I
yeah,
agree with you completely, and I think it's what we do, especially in this whole age of out there visibility. I think you have to find, you got to find what your balance is.
yeah.
What I mean, like, and for me, it's as I've gotten older, I was always, I never had to wear makeup, I never had to do all that stuff, and now I do because I'm so much older. But and you're like, I'm finding my place with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, in the world of visibility on social media, I mean, I love social media. Oh my God. I mean, it drives me crazy because it moves so fast, and I don't, but that's keeping my brain going because I have to learn everything all the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's for free.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost you anything but content.
Yeah. And your time, it costs your time. And I think you've got two good channels. I mean, you've done something smart. You're doing Instagram and Twitter. Instagram and Twitter. You're not oversaturating. You're not, you're not giving yourself too much to do. You've got two channels, two things, and literally you could do 10 Twitter posts on the same day and just schedule them, right? And it just keeps it keeps the content out there because a Twitter post is 280 characters. So it's not like it's really long, right? That's
It's a
two
great writing
sentences.
tool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great writing tool. It really helps my writing
Oh,
because it's trained me to be really concise and precise and get my message out quickly, which reads really well.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really helped my writing.
Yeah. It's like Hemingway. He would rewrite sentences until they were short and sweet and perfect. Twitter has turned all writers into Hemingway, I guess. Right.
Well, I don't know about that, but okay.
Because his thing was he wanted his sentences to be concise and easy to understand. We've talked about your Eyelash app, and we've talked about social media, but do you have a favorite marketing tool or a favorite marketing tip to share for authors?
I really do love my Twitter. For me personally, um, because I find it's really I can engage. In other words, I can get a conversation going, and then they repeat it. It's like amazing. I have over 5,000 followers, and I got there by engaging, especially in my caregiving world, and doing it every day. So there's always somebody that's going to, not always, but I mean, people will share my stuff, but they'll absolutely engage and they'll say something to me. Then I can say something back, and there's a conversation there for me. That's my personal best thing. And then the other thing is just content. Don't be. It's just make content. Doesn't have to be brilliant every day. Don't procrastinate on it. Like that's the biggest thing for me. I had to learn because I'm a perfectionist. I had to get over myself. Get the content out there next, and then write more. There's an endless amount of content in your head. You can't worry about.
Yeah, that perfection thing is a killer. It is a killer. That's why I oftentimes will post pictures of myself without a wig, because that way it's a reminder that I don't have to be perfect, right? I don't have to be perfect. So if I put the picture out there, like, okay, this is who I really am.
And
I'm
it
off
is
that.
perfect. You are perfect that way.
But yeah, exactly. So you are release the perfection so that you can be perfect.
Right.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. That is like my new favorite quote. Release your perfectionism so you can be perfect.
Yay.
All right.
Yay.
So is there anything that you want to talk about that I didn't ask you?
No.
Good answer. Good answer. Before I ask the last question, I just want to go ahead.
Gratitude. Do we just quick story? Do you have time for a quick
Sure,
story?
please.
Okay, so my quick gratitude story is this. So there was a day when it was a Sunday, I was taking care of my parents. I had just finished cleaning my parents' bathroom. For caregivers out there, they will understand what that means. I don't have to go into it. It was not the prettiest of duties. But I came out and the bathroom was off their bedroom. And I came out of the bathroom and they were in bed, both of them. And they were snoring. Both of them were lovely. And my dad had his foot out of it, and they were in bed together. And, I always make me get, I looked at them and I knew they were safe and they were warm. I just changed the sheets. They had lunch. They were taking their nap together. Do you know what I mean? And I thought to myself, oh my God, just stand here and look at them for a minute because there's going to be a day when they're not going to be here, and it's just be grateful right now that now their bathroom's clean. You're proud to give them service. Look at what you've done for them. They're peaceful and they're calm. Just be grateful that you're that where you are right here, right now. And And sure enough, of course, like, so I've got that picture in my mind of the two of them. And then when they did wake up and we did have dinner together, it was amazing. It was like, like, so instead of feeling like, Cinderella, scrubbing the bathroom, poop off the bathroom floor, I got it that, I had them and they were with me and we had time together. So I think, that gave me a beautiful day with them and a beautiful memory for the rest of my life. So gratitude's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. To look for those, sometimes you have to look for them. Sometimes they just happen. And sometimes you have to look for those moments of gratitude. I love it. Okay. Before we get on to your actual moment of gratitude in the interview, I wanted to say how excited I am that we actually got to have a face-to-face conversation after 10 years.
No,
And
I
that is,
know.
and when we first met, I don't think technology existed for us to have a conversation like this.
Yeah.
So it is so much fun. I mean, we've been social media friends and phone friends for 10 years. And I've always enjoyed having conversations with you. And it is so nice to finally have a face-to-face. One day
That's
we'll have
wonderful.
coffee. One day we'll be
One
able to
day
see each
we
other
will.
in person. So,
Absolutely.
and that's, I think
Absolutely.
that is what is beautiful about living in this time is that I truly do believe that you are my friend, right? I really
Yeah.
consider you a friend, and we've never met in person. And that is something that couldn't have happened 100 years ago. So,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing.
It
Anyway,
is a beautiful thing.
this is my favorite part of the interview. It's your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
I'm grateful for friends like you. I'm grateful that, I can sit here during my day and have a minute where we get real and authentic and we talk about things that really matter and we want to make a difference. And we're doing it and you're helping me do it. So I'm really grateful for that. I always wanted to be famous. I was a singer-songwriter and I always wanted to perform and I'm realizing that all that stuff that I did is all coming together. And it's like for moments like this, where I can just be relaxed and be with somebody I care about and, just be out there.
Thanks for joining us this week for Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast, helping micropreneurs find your micro influencer magic. Your time is valuable, and I am ever so grateful that you chose to spend your time with us today. Be sure to check the show notes at gratitudegeek.com, episode 137, for links to all the groovy resources mentioned today, and of course, to connect with Susanne White. And while you're there, why not subscribe to the show on Audible, iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast players. Our theme music is track 14 by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. I've been your host, Candice Rodarty. Join me on my mission to spread gratitude, sow seeds of appreciation, and harvest a bounty of generosity and kindness. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.